All right, Brendan, go live on video. Stand by for audio. All right, good day and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to a Live the Fuel show. And this evening, I get to bring back a repeat. And actually, the exciting part here is we're recording this in May. And this gentleman I just aired at the end of April. So I think we might be breaking the record as the fastest return for a repeat recording session with a guest co-host. So to refresh our newer listeners, this gentleman was aired on episode 173. And we talked a lot about primal lifestyle. If you ever heard of the primal blueprint, the paleo lifestyle, paleo diet. We tickled a little bit into the keto world, but that's why I'm bringing him back today, because we need to dig deeper into these key words we're seeing nowadays of keto, ketosis. What are your ketones? What's the difference between ketoacidosis, which is a bad word? But you name it, we're going to talk about it today, because this gentleman is not just a doctor, but a doctor of oncology. So welcome back to the show, Brendan Prendergast.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me.
So did I intro you okay? I think we set the stage.
I think we did, yeah. So I guess if people want to know a little bit more, they can check out our last podcast, which
that's the beauty of it.
I really enjoyed. Just done a couple of weeks ago, really, and it was my first podcast. So and now here we are back for my second. So I'm glad to be.
I will warn you, it could get deep. I mean, you might become obsessed, and you might be going on like podcasts now for the next 2 years.
I think I'm already building an addiction.
Well, and for our listeners, real quick, because I know that this guy is very intelligent. He's going to get deep into this stuff. He's passionate about it. He and I, a quick refresh on the last episode, he and I talked a lot about, obstacle course racing and like the OCR world. And we get along that way with the mud life and the Spartan life, and you name it. We do a lot of different things here. And I want to quickly call out that you could follow him and his lovely wife at ourhealthhabit.com. This significant other, this partnership, they talk a lot about the primal paleo world. And then we discussed a lot about the positives of it in relation to weight loss, body composition, energy levels, sleep, biomarkers, the whole cholesterol world, LDL versus HDL versus LDLC. I don't know, Doc. Are we going to overwhelm people?
No, I think you hit on all the high points right there. I mean, that's really kind of the nexus of what the blog is all about. And I think today, after we did the last recording, I said, wow, I think that went really well, but gosh, there's so many stones we left unturned. And as you pointed out, that's a chronic problem with these. You could talk for hours, but one thing I really told Scott I wanted to come back on and get a little bit deeper into was this ketosis, which everyone has probably heard about. Anybody following health and fitness has probably heard something, good or bad, about ketones and ketosis. And as an oncologist, I wanted to give my perspective on the potential benefits of ketosis and both treating and preventing cancer.
So, quick question on that. Just because I got us at the stage, I think we touched a little bit about last time, but why are so many doctors afraid to talk about this?
Well,
aren't you risking your career? I mean, I don't know. I mean, well, it seems like it's gotten that bad.
So you're right. And a lot of physicians, especially ones that are not into health and fitness and who really are just sort of operating on the knowledge that they acquired in medical school and or residency, they are naturally afraid of the word ketosis, because in our training, I mean, in my life, I will tell you, I thought of ketosis as a bad thing until about 2 or 3 years ago. And I was even paleo, primal paleo for 6 years, 7 years now. And the reason is because it all comes back to a condition which most of you have heard of called diabetic ketoacidosis. And that is a very dangerous and potentially life-threatening condition. It's abbreviated DKA in the medical world. And that is a condition that is almost exclusively seen in type 1 diabetics. So those are typically, in other words, that's also known as juvenile or childhood diabetes.
I'm not even sure if I spelled that right. Is it KETOACIDIO or DOSIS?
Yes, perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
DKA. Versus ketosis.
Ketosis. And we can get into the weeds on medical terminology, because honestly, your first year of medical school is pretty much like a vocabulary class, like learning all the different terms. But the devil's in the details. But ketoacidosis it's funny in medicine. A lot of the words, if you know what the root of the word is, you know what the word is. So ketoacidosis is a state of metabolic. Sorry about my computer.
Oh, no worries.
It's a state of metabolic acidosis
Hmm.
that is brought on by very high levels of ketones. But this metabolic condition can almost exclusively only occurs in type 1 diabetics who have no insulin. That's the pathophysiology of that disease, is that they have it's an autoimmune condition, and the pancreas is attacked by the body's own immune system for an unknown reason at this point. And what ultimately happens is the pancreas is incapable of producing insulin. And so the blood sugar will go very high, and insulin is the compensatory response of the body to high levels of glucose. And so what happens in these individuals is their glucose level goes very high, but they cannot make any insulin. And then the body also produces ketones, because even though there's all this glucose in the blood, none of it can be brought into the cell, because that's actually what insulin does. It allows you to bring glucose into the cell.
So does it act like a carrier?
No, it acts as it actually helps a transport molecule to bring glucose across the cell membrane.
Oh, so is it all right? So okay, I'd love to translate. We've talked a lot with scientists and such.
Yeah.
And your vernacular is amazing. So for the average everyday person, is it acting like, are they on for a piggyback ride, or is it kind of like, hey, I will adapt you, like a metamorphosis to allow you to pass through?
Well, no, there's actually, and I think now I'm getting into an area where I'd probably have to bone up on my cellular physiology. This is like second year medical school stuff.
It's okay. We don't have to go too deep.
Yeah, but the bottom line is, I think what's important, there's a transport molecule that's inserted into the cell membrane. But I think the important thing for the listeners to know is that if you don't have type 1 diabetes, the chances of you going into you first of all could not go into diabetic ketoacidosis, but the chances of you developing ketoacidosis is very low. It's not impossible. So there is some caution to be advised when you are going into ketosis, but it would require basically a ketone level probably above 5 or 7 millimolar, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But anyhow, that's a very high ketone level. And the other really important thing to know is, if you don't have type 1 diabetes, then your body is capable of producing that insulin to get whatever glucose is available into the cell. So that condition is unlikely to occur.
So let's pause. So I do not have type 1 diabetes. My father does, or he did create or attain in a bad way type 2 diabetes probably close to 8 to 10 years ago, and we've improved it, but he still doesn't completely listen to everything that I say. So you're saying, okay, ketoacidosis, the bad keto, really you pretty much have to have almost a direct tie to a type 1 relationship. Is that what I'm hearing?
Almost always. I've never seen it or more or less heard of it even in a type 2 diabetic. It is possible.
It's interesting because a connection for you is Vinny Tortorich. We've talked a lot about him. We're promoting his Truth About Fat documentary here. And so he brought up a great story on this podcast I'd like to get your feedback on, where on this exact subject, I think he had given some fitness tips to his nephew back in Louisiana. And his nephew was dating a nurse. So as soon as she heard that he was trying to get his body to a state of ketosis, she freaks out. She's like, your uncle's trying to kill you. That is the worst place you can be, blah, blah, blah. So that's why I think it's really important that we're trying to help people really understand there is a clear difference here. So I'm very excited about this conversation today. But I want to make sure you heard some of that backstory, because maybe other people are hearing that type of reaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. And as we'll talk about, in the next hour here with you. Ketosis is not in and of itself a harmful state. Ketoacidosis is, and I guess the point your listeners need to know is that it's hard, if not impossible, to get yourself into ketoacidosis without, like I said, really going on a very prolonged fast or getting your ketone levels to a very high level. It would be almost impossible.
Okay.
So suffice it to say, ketosis is in fact, I believe it's a natural state of the human body. It's not a pathological condition. In fact, it is a evolutionarily probably developed as a beneficial condition for the human being to enter into during times of scarcity. So when you look at
it back to that primal type of thing here, the paleo
absolutely.
thing?
But when you get down to the nitty gritty of it, what are ketones? Well, ketosis is the definition of ketosis is the state of having ketone bodies in your blood. So what are the ketone bodies? Well, there's three of them. The most commonly talked about one is beta hydroxybutyrate, abbreviated BHB. Most people would abbreviate it BHB.
BHB, okay.
And then there's acetoacetate. And acetoacetate and beta hydroxybutyrate are really the two main ketone bodies. And the third one is acetone.
Is there any abbreviations for those other two besides BHB?
Yeah, I don't know of an abbreviation that I haven't seen anyone throw an abbreviation. But the important one, again, is beta hydroxybutyrate, because that's the one that can be measured easily in the blood. And I've got with me here my for the YouTube viewers here, I've got my Precision Extra device, and I'm gonna.
Oh, that's the one that was on your blog, right?
Yeah, and I figured, while we're here, I'll at some point during the interview here, I'll show you how that's done too.
Which article was that? Because I'm going to do a screen share real quick to show off your site a little bit.
Okay.
For you and the wife. And which blog was that one again? Because I think we tagged that in the last podcast episode on 173. But
yeah. Let's see.
Here we go. Sorry about that.
I did a post series on a what's called the 7-day carb test. So I was talking about, I haven't done a post yet as of this recording on ketosis, but one is in the works. So maybe by the time this one airs, it will be up. But you can see in that picture there, that's a little,
I'm going to load it up now.
Yeah, sure. That's called a glucometer. And some of these devices, like that's my glucometer. It just measures blood glucose. The one here that I'll show you, this is called the...
Now, this is different. So let me stop sharing so that way that image comes up bigger for the video watchers on YouTube.
There we go. Is made by Abbott Laboratories, and it's called the Precision Extra. It actually does both glucose and ketones.
Wow.
So yeah, it's, because a diabetic, remember, a type 1 or type 2 diabetic, if their blood sugar goes very high, when we're talking into like the 300-400 range, okay, if you ever check your glucose, you and I are probably never cracking a 200.
Admittedly, here's the funny thing. I've been experimenting with ketosis, and I've been doing fasting. You and I talked about this last time. I've been doing fasting. Oh God, I found it in 2010, but I do it with a specific protocol called nutritional cleansing. Either way, I'm taking my body and putting it into an extended fasted state from coming out of sleep and extending that. I mean, admittedly, I did it today. I didn't eat until, oh God, I think 1:30, 2 o'clock.
Uh-huh.
So plenty of energy all day. I mean, I'm good. So, but I've never used all these little devices that you're using. And everybody's like, well, how can you be experimenting with ketosis and say that you're a keto guy and you've never even used a keto stick? And I was like, I just know. I don't. Well, how would you answer that?
Well, that's a good question, and I think let's get into that, because I'm kind of again, when it comes to why haven't you? How can you say? And in a way, honestly, it doesn't matter. I mean, does it really matter that you know exactly what your ketone is? No, it probably doesn't, as long as you're feeling excellent, your biomarkers look good. Why should you care? Well, I do, just because I'm a scientific guy, and I kind of just want to see the number to go with it. I like to
Oh, I
quantify it.
understand why you're doing it. It
Yeah,
totally makes sense.
yeah, but I don't think you need to do it. But I think you would find it interesting, and the reason is because, and I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm on the keto diet,"
Yep.
or I'm in ketosis, and I always kind of say, "Really?
Are
Are
you?
you sure?" Because as somebody who's sort of messed around with it, and then of course using this meter, getting into ketosis is not easy. So there are a couple ways you can get into ketosis. The first is to not eat, okay, to fast. And really, we're talking about water only fast. Honestly, even if you cheated, and like you mentioned before, you like to do like shots of olive oil,
Yeah.
you could do that, and you would still enter into ketosis, because really what ketosis is a state your body switches into. It's an alternative fuel source for your brain and your muscle when there is no glucose available. And that's
Okay.
what earlier I had mentioned, in sort of an evolutionary adaptation. You can imagine our, caveman ancestor, hundreds of thousands of years ago, when in times of plenty, I think they were omnivores. They ate, if there was animals available, they would hunt. If there was fruit and berries available, they would forage. But surely, especially as we migrated further away from the equator and there was winter, you would go days, if not longer, multiple days on end without any real food source.
Mhm.
And so if we were completely reliant on glucose, which some doctors think we are, they think, oh, the brain needs glucose. And when you don't eat, you get lightheaded and you pass out. Well, um, that's, I guess, possible for some individuals, but I think that's a condition of, I think that's a metabolic derangement. The healthy condition would be a person whose body is able to, when there is a shortage of glucose, switch over and start burning fat for fuel. And we call that being fat adapted.
Yep.
And ultimately, fat does not go into your brain. It doesn't percolate through the blood-brain barrier. But what does are the ketone bodies. And so that's really what's fueling our brain in a time of starvation, or in modern days in an intentional fasted state.
Oh, I've been trying to stay away from this argument because a good friend of mine owns one of the CrossFit gyms I train at. I used to coach with him,
Mm-hmm.
and his now fiance, love her. We party together. My fiance and I are their friends. We're getting his fiance into mountain biking, so we're biking more. Very intelligent woman. She's a scientist, research scientist for one of the big pharmaceutical companies. So every time I promote Vinny's little trademark of no sugar, no grains, the NSNG lifestyle, every once in a while you'll see her make a little comment on social media like, the body needs glucose. There's no way you can live your lifestyle. I was like, because I brag the fact that other than red wine, I have not consumed or eaten fruit in over a year,
Yep.
just to prove my point. So
Well,
I was like, well, I'm actually
again,
consuming fruit. I'm consuming fatty fruit like avocado oil,
yeah,
olive oil, fatty fruits. So
and obviously that individual is misguided in the sense that there's a group of people, the Inuit in Alaska, who have been thriving there for many years.
on fat.
And I got news for her. There isn't any fruit growing in Alaska. So these people, they survive and thrive on basically a ketogenic diet, to be quite honest. Because in fact, not only is there not fruit, but there really isn't any vegetables either.
No, they fish.
It's a tundra, so they eat
Yeah,
whale, or they eat seal meat, fish.
yeah.
It's basically protein and fat, and a lot of fat. And so they are a naturally occurring group of people who in again, now in the modern world, I'm sure they're eating Doritos and soda,
Yeah,
but
unfortunately, we've influenced them, and
yeah, absolutely.
now we're justifying the logistical cost to ship all that stuff up there.
Mm-hmm.
So
But
yeah,
those people are eating a ketogenic diet. So again, we mentioned earlier, how do you get into ketosis? Well, one way is you fast. Another way is to eat what's called a ketogenic diet. And what is a ketogenic diet? Well, it is a very, by anybody's standards, it's a very high fat diet. Because
okay,
again, it has to be extremely carb restricted. It has to be high in fat, and really, quite frankly, relatively low in protein. And so for a lot of us
Oh,
paleo
interesting.
types, yeah. And so that's something that, maybe that's why I say for you, it probably would be interesting to check your ketones, because even though you may say, oh, I'm eating ketogenic, I got news for you. If you're eating any decent amount of protein, you're not going to be in ketosis.
See,
Because
I haven't had this chat with Vinny yet.
Mhm.
I'm loving this now
Yeah.
because I will admit it. It was we're recording this, ladies and gentlemen, the day after Mother's Day, and I like to keep it real. I don't care if I timestamp it because we're a busy show.
Yeah.
And I made dinner for everybody. My future mother-in-law and father-in-law came over, and I grilled some beautiful grass-fed New York strip steaks, some chicken. We made what'd she make? A cauliflower. It looks like rice, but it's cauliflower with
Yeah.
Parmesan
Yeah.
cheese and butternut squash in it. It was awesome. Obviously, the more cheese you add, the better it tastes. And because cauliflower is not that exciting. But anyway, like I usually sit down and I have like 2 steaks at a meal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's
graded, I've got fats and proteins, and New York strip does have good fat on it, right? It's
sure.
good marbling.
Hmm.
But to your point, I might be overdoing the protein.
Well, it depends what you mean by overdoing. But if you're saying in terms of being in ketosis, I guarantee you're not at that rate.
Okay.
The typical macronutrient profile for a real ketogenic diet is going to be something on the order of 85% fat, 80 to 85% fat, 10 to 15% protein, and only about 0 to 5% carbohydrate. So we're talking very, very low carbohydrate, usually less than 20 or 30 grams of carbs in a day.
That's pretty wild. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't.
Yeah. So,
But
and
what's
you
so
gotta,
good, you're reinforcing my carb factor. Like, I don't think we need a lot of carbs because, like, we were just down at UPenn in Philadelphia this weekend for my fiance's reunion, 10-year reunion, and I have people introduce and they see what I'm eating, when they're bringing around the hors d'oeuvres and stuff. And she's like, "Oh yeah, Scott doesn't eat carbs," and I was like, "Babe, I eat carbs. They're just vegetable sourced carbs,
right.
and I don't need that a lot."
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's kind of crazy. And so here I am doing a podcast on ketones and ketosis and the possible benefits of it. But let me get this part out of the way. I'm not a huge uh, ketogenic diet advocate. I think it has its
Interesting.
benefits, and I personally experimenting with it. I think it has a role certainly in some disease processes, and if I had one of those disease processes, which we'll get to in a little bit, I would give it a little more thought. But the main thing about it is really hard to maintain a ketogenic diet because of that macronutrient profile. It doesn't lend itself to a pretty typical diet. You basically have to have a lot of nuts, oils, and just sources of fat with minimal protein. So you've got to limit your protein level to a level that I frankly is difficult for me to maintain.
I wish I had them in here. I have the highest fat content nut with low protein that I've ever gotten. I think I told you about those pili nuts from the Philippines.
Oh, okay,
They're
yeah.
grown in volcanic soil. They're like super high enriched magnesium because of the soil from the Philippines. But they're called, his website is Eat Pili Nuts. I
Oh,
promote them all the time. I buy his nuts all the time. So,
I'm gonna check
but they'd
that
be
out.
great nut for you to check. Well, it's on my website. You don't have to writing it down. You just go to my website and
Check it out.
yeah, I have my own discount code for our listeners. So quick listeners, if you go to livethefuel.com like he's going to do, and this is not an ad, I don't get paid for this. But when you go to supported brands, you'll see the logo for Eat Pili Nuts, and it says Fuel, Fuel. Use that discount code, and you get 10% off. So that's
Great.
how much we love the nuts. He hooked us up with a discount. So that being said,
yeah. So we've kind of talked a little bit about the ketogenic diet, but suffice it to say, it is I find it to be a pretty challenging diet. But if you had a condition that could be reversed or managed, for instance, the most studied condition where a ketogenic diet is beneficial is epilepsy, especially childhood epilepsy. And so, if I were facing that type of diagnosis, I think, the challenge of eating a high fat diet you'd find a way around it. It's better than being on 6 different anti-epileptics,
right.
But there's now a third way. So, until about a year ago, and I've been following it kind of this whole time and seeing the evolution. the only way to get into ketosis would either be fasting or eat this very difficult to maintain ketogenic diet. And now there's a third way, and these are called ketone supplements or exogenous ketone.
I know the back and forth on this. I know Vinny's not a big fan of it either, but it's interesting. So
Yeah, I mean,
touchy subject.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's enough data out there for anyone to really make a credible argument for or against, the exogenous ketones. To the best of our knowledge, they are the same exact molecules as you would generate naturally in your own body by fasting or eating that diet. And so the beauty of exogenous ketones is you can achieve a level of what we would consider therapeutic ketosis in 5 minutes rather than 3 days.
Well, I think the key words that you just mentioned was therapeutic ketosis, right?
Mm-hmm,
so this is for select situations.
Potentially. So let me just say one more thing about these before we move on to what therapeutic ketosis would be. There are two types of exogenous ketones. You can get the salt or the ester. And the esters are very new, and to my understanding, they're very expensive, and I'm not sure you can just buy them on the internet. Ketone salts, on the other hand, you can, and I've tried them. I guess any ketone product, these exogenous ones, they taste awful.
So when you say salts, is it like I know, for example, Vinny just went and visited these salt mines in Utah. So he's going to be using this ancient salt from their mines. It's basically a competitor to the classic pink Himalayan sea salt, only it's in Utah. And just as beautiful, pure, amazing. Anyways, the point is that the body does require salt. Yeah, this is not the normal salt, right?
Salt is referring to because a ketone you can't just ingest a ketone. It has to be formed into a salt or an ester. Wow. That's more of a biochemical terminology.
Okay, so this is a manufactured thing then. There's no way to create a supplement without manufacturing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we at least beta hydroxybutyrate. Now, we mentioned the
BHB.
The BHB, and we mentioned one of them is acetone. I would highly advise against anyone ever consuming that. That's the same thing that's in like nail polish remover. So,
lovely.
Yeah, and your body makes that naturally. So,
even more lovely.
Yeah. And so, interestingly, if you've ever heard of someone talk about keto breath or ketosis breath.
Yes. Everybody's like, "Oh, do you have the smelly breath?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
That's acetone. That's the acetone is cleared in your breath.
Okay.
So yeah, kind of interesting there. But so anyhow, just if anybody's interested, ketone salts are available. I bought one on Amazon like about a year ago and played around with it. I took my ketone level before and after taking it, and they work. They do bump you up a little bit. I thought the thing tasted awful because the product itself, I think, in its native state is so unpalatable that they jazz it up with all kinds of artificial sweeteners. And
that's why I've never taken it. I live no sugars, so
they're calorie free. It's like the stevia kind of stuff, but it's so.
It's the wrong marketing. Oh, it's 0 calories. I'm like, the calorie isn't the problem. Half the people out there don't know what calorie is. It's a unit of heat measurement. So I tell people, like, what is the quality of your calories? Then, more importantly, the sugar should come first before you even look at the calories. In my experience, that's just me. You're the doc. Right. I'll let you take your position on that.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll leave it at this. I'm not a big fan of artificial sweeteners either, so for a variety of reasons. But anyhow, they are non-caloric, but at the same time, I think they have their own sets of problems. But anyhow, so those ketone salts are out there. I think the ketone esters are available now if somebody was really interested in it. And those apparently will really get the ketone level flared up very quickly. But I haven't tried those, so.
So if people are, because I get people messaging me once in a while because I post so much stuff about meat and fat and I do hashtag some stuff on keto on Instagram. And once in a while someone messages me like, "Oh, so have you started taking those supplements yet?" So if somebody's out there and they got cash to burn, because let's be real, you're spending money, instead of spending money on food and a healthy, natural lifestyle, you're starting to invest in supplements. Like, what do you tell somebody like that? You don't have to take a professional position. I'm just wondering casually, like, hey guys, you might want to do more research, or I don't know, what we got?
As far as those ketone supplements, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I would say those are for somebody who is who's already tried the ketogenic diet and may like the way they feel on the ketogenic diet, but find that that adhering to that diet is very difficult. That's sort of like a shortcut. You mentioned one of your colleagues or whatever wasn't a big fan of it, and I think there's some the theory against using exogenous ketones would be this, that a lot of the benefits of ketosis comes from getting into ketosis, and if you take that shortcut and just ingest them, perhaps you are missing out on some of the benefits of the process. Again, I think that's the sort of underpinning, but I don't have any data to back that up.
Well, to your point, the benefits of the process, the key word here is the process. What process are you talking about? In my experience, what we're talking about here is actually teaching and training your body and your lifestyle to do this naturally.
Right.
So basically this hack, as people like to call it, right? If I'm hacking my state of ketosis, I can get in and out whenever I want. But then this also goes back to excessive unnatural supplementation. I do support supplements, the right vitamins and minerals where your food is lacking. That's my personal opinion. Our food is lacking, all right? But don't just these crazy supplements out there. If your body naturally does it, and then you start training it to always depend on that ketone supplement, are you not possibly training your body to not worry about making its own anymore? I don't know. I'm not a laboratory scientist. I'm just saying, I would think that the human body is pretty intelligent.
Yeah.
And you teaching it that you're just going to keep forcing it in and out with these supplements, your body's going to be like, sweet, I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I think that's a valid concern as well. Okay. So, I mean, again, I mentioned it, but I'm also not a big proponent of the ketone supplements. But I think it's important to know that they exist, and that some research is being done with them. Because again, when we're talking about the benefits of ketosis for cancer patients and for Alzheimer's patients and epileptics, when you're competing against a drug industry, where they say, well, we could give them this pill or this infusion and solve that problem. That's great. But when you tell them, oh, well, we've got a remedy that could potentially solve this. And you say, well, how do you do it? Well, you say you have to eat 90% of your calories from fat and you can't eat any nobody can adhere to this diet, or at least they find it very challenging.
As you just explained to me, I'm definitely not adhering as well as I thought I was, right?
Yeah.
I think that goes back to actually Vinny's done a good job. He's done his research because he's a cancer survivor. And he's made a point that, listen, he's like, these people who want to do protein shakes, he's anti-protein shake. So, and he's like, listen, get it from whole food. And he's like, especially if you're trying to get to this state of ketosis and that lifestyle, he's like, you're ODing on something that to your point, you just gave to me, like I'm ODing when I eat a couple of steaks. If I'm trying to stay in a state of ketosis, I'm actually doing too much protein than fat. So it's a very interesting conundrum for a lot of people because they're trying to make it work, but they don't know which way to go. And that's why I think a lot of this needs to get out there. People don't understand this. I am still figuring it out.
Yeah, and that's an important thing, and that was a kind of a sticking point for me initially, was the protein level. But when we talk about ketosis, so I think one of the important things is like what are the benefits of it? And there's a lot of there's some certain benefits and there's some sort of unknown benefits. So who's using ketones, I think is another important question. Right now, the biggest areas where I hear about it and people are talking, number one is people trying to lose weight, right? So if you're on a ketogenic diet, oftentimes, especially if your metabolism is screwed up and you've been carb dependent, oftentimes switching to a ketogenic diet will help really kickstart weight loss. But it has to be, again, it has to be, if it's going to be real weight loss and sustained weight loss, it has to be a lifestyle, like you mentioned earlier.
Thank you. Yes, I'm always trying to get people off of the diet word, even though that's the viral marketing term right now, right? Paleo diet, primal diet, keto diet, NSNG diet. I'm like, guys, the psychology behind diet, in my experience, because I've studied marketing and psychology versus you with oncology, is that, guys, diet has gotten branded into what people don't realize, a short-term mindset.
Fixes. Yep.
Right. You want the lifestyle piece. What can I sustain? That's why I'm actually even more enjoying this talk today, because I think it's exciting to go in and out of ketosis, right? The keto lifestyle. I do it, right? But without me doing the testing, I'm definitely not in as much as I am. It's not a bad thing. I'm healthy. I'm fit. I'm 40. I'm doing Spartan races. I just did a 2-day CrossFit competition a few weeks ago. Like, it's not like I'm not fit.
Right. And so I think you hit the nail on the head is you can follow a ketogenic lifestyle and maybe not necessarily be in ketosis. And you may derive many of the benefits. And that's why I said I'm not a huge proponent. I think that you don't have to go all the way. You could eat what's called a kind of a modified ketogenic diet and gain at least the weight loss and energy level and the mental clarity and all the other issues we've talked about. But
What do you say to people that, let's say, have been doing it? And obviously, and I think this all goes back to, yeah, well, let's go ahead and tie right back to cancer, right?
mm-hmm.
Cancer is a very, you're going to have to ring on this one. It's not easy. I don't know how else better to say it. People are in a very restricted lifestyle when they're going through severe cases of cancer. And I see people eating the crap that the hospitals feed. And maybe your facility is different, so I don't want to generalize. But
it's not.
Dear Lord, I was like, I thought you're supposed to be saving lives here. And, oh, here's your Jello today. I'm like, again, I don't know where the studies are at about cancer feeding on sugar and all that stuff, but I was like, I just know that sugar in general is not that good, and that's completely manufactured crap. So you might want to be feeding these people fresh vegetables, meats, proteins, fats, etc. How do you get into
Yeah, but
that?
if you feed somebody in the hospital fat, you might give them a heart attack, Scott.
Right, right. Well, what the heck's up with that? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Do you guys get into like fights in the locker rooms at all, like over
Oh
there, like
man, I've
heart
just moved.
doctors and oncologists?
Honestly, I've just sort of moved beyond it. But
Do
it
they put you
seems
in
like
your own wing?
you really can't even have that kind of conversation with most of the cardiology or primary care folks because they're very um, kind of set in their ways, when it comes to that stuff. So,
Well, now
it,
earlier in the episode, you hinted at it too. Let's be real. Let's be fair. Let's say doctors in general in all niches might be a little archaic or out of touch. Because to your point, you guys go through so much education. Then you get into the real world, you're practicing, and your continuing ed is what? Coming from pharmaceutical sales reps?
well, not necessarily, but it's all there's very little. There's a lot of inertia in medical education. So once a concept is sort of accepted as standard of care or the accepted theory, it's sort of so deeply entrenched that the institutional memory, everybody says, oh, well, that's the way it was when I learned it. And, oh, if you're saying something different, it must be some quackery. And there's very little impetus to change, especially radically change a viewpoint in medicine.
Well, here's the funny thing. As far as studying ketosis, doesn't this actually go pretty far back? Wasn't this actually a
Yeah,
way of
yeah.
practice many decades ago in the
Yeah.
medical
So,
field?
well, even if you want to go back much more than many decades, but even a millennia or two, there's reports of the ancient Greeks. They didn't know about ketosis, obviously, but they did know about it sort of in a happenstance way. When somebody, it's written about, was having spells or seizures, what they didn't exactly know what to call it, they would put these people, they would basically just lock them away with no food for days on end. And they would find out that, the spirit or whatever you want to call it would leave the person. And what was really happening is that person was going into a state of fasted ketosis, and that was helping them come out of their epileptic seizure.
Wow.
So that was thousands of years ago. Now, fast forward in the 1920s, there was a doctor at the Mayo Clinic. I think his name was Dr. Wilder. And he's the one who coined the term the ketogenic diet and found out that by putting patients into a medically and dietarily induced state of ketosis, that their seizures would go away. And this was the preferred treatment for epilepsy in the early part of the 20th century.
So I was hoping
Now,
you'd come to this point. Do you
yeah,
want to know the famous foundation that reinforces everything that you just talked about?
I think I've heard of this. This is about a
Uh-huh.
child's name.
Movie director's son,
Right.
famous guy with a lot of money.
Who is it?
The name of the foundation?
Yeah, is it
The Charlie Foundation
Charlie? That's it, the Charlie
for
Foundation.
ketogenic therapies.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, real quick, you know what? Because I want to plug these guys.
Yeah.
They've been doing amazing work. There we go. The Charlie Foundation for Ketogenic Therapies. And the quick backstory was, I forget, I'm actually blanking on the movie directors or some very, very well off
Yes.
guy. Because actually
Yeah.
he's been on Vinny's podcast, The Fitness Confidential. But in 1993, quick story was Charlie Abrams. That's right, the famous Abrams. There you go. Director's name is Abrams. So long story short, they were ready to cut into this kid's head and take a piece of his brain out because of his epileptic seizures had gotten so severe. Like the sequence was speeding up. They were happening over and over and over again. And the parents nobody had an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one day his dad walked into like the library or whatever at the hospital and then sees a book about this old therapy. And he's like, why haven't we tried this yet? He's like, well, this work? And the doctor's like, well, maybe, but yeah, we don't support that anymore. We're going to do it this way. He's like, oh, you want to cut into my kid's head instead of try something with a dietary practice first? That's how crazy this is, right?
It really is. It really is. And it's great. I'm glad you tied this in because I have heard of the Charlie Foundation, and I know they do great work. And so I'm glad that we brought that up.
I'm excited that we have to tie this together because I'm sure you can use this for everything else you're doing too.
And this is a great resource for patients and listeners. But so again, that tying back in, that was the foundation of the ketogenic diet. No doubt about it. It was invented, or at least discovered or developed for childhood epilepsy, and it works very well. And as you mentioned, it's kind of come back into vogue in the last since 1993, and now at places like Johns Hopkins, it's a they're studying it constantly, and we know that there are other benefits of the ketogenic diet, and one of those areas, at least that we'd like to probably spend a little time talking about, would be does it help potentially in cancer?
Let's tie this in.
Let's dive into that. So I think we need to back up, and again, it's tough to talk about this. Again, I have a background in we have biochemistry.
Keep it legal. Keep your career safe.
Physiology and all this. No, but I'm trying to talk. When you get down into the nitty gritty of cellular metabolism, there are some terms that I'll need to throw out there, but basically, our cells produce energy in one of two main pathways. It's either aerobic or anaerobic. And
okay, I'm up on that.
And so most people have heard those terminologies. And but what is aerobic metabolism? Well, it means it's in the presence of oxygen, and this is the normal way that a cell makes energy. And the cellular energy is called ATP. That's kind of like the cellular currency of energy.
Okay.
And when a normal cell is what we call respiring, the cell uses the organelle, which is a little subparticle of the cell called the mitochondria. And the mitochondria goes through this process of cellular respiration, also known as oxidative phosphorylation, and it produces a whole bunch of ATP and like 30 some molecules of ATP. That is the preferred and normal way that a cell makes energy. So ultimately, when you eat food of any kind, that's what happens. Okay, your cell uses it to make energy.
Well, and Millie, we've discussed the power of mitochondria with multiple experts on this show, including the famous Dr. Jack Kruse with a K. Great, by the way. If you ever literally want to run out of a unlimited resource of information, go to his site, jackkruse.com. The guy's a neurologist, expert in mitochondria, and I mean, some of his stuff seems kind of wackadoo, but then again, once you do the research, it's like, oh, maybe it's not wackadoo. It's just nobody understands it yet. But his whole point is the health of the mitochondria is crucial. It's the power plant of the cell. That's what I'm hearing.
And certainly it is. And in a normal cell, it is the power plant of the cell. But I mentioned, again, there are two primary pathways. Well, if you didn't have any oxygen available, the cell would use this other process, anaerobic metabolism, also called fermentation. And so what it actually does is it truly ferments glucose and to make energy. And it only makes 2 ATP molecules when it goes through the fermentation pathway. I think I have that number right. It's 2. It's a very low number of ATP. So
I have heard before. I think that's the big argument behind the whole keto thing. It's like, guys, do you want to make 2 or do you want to make 30? or whatever.
Right. Well, really what it comes down to, again, when we're tying this into cancer, there's a very unique thing about cancer cells. And this is almost all cancer cells. It's not 100%, but it's not all cancer types, but almost all cancers have a very unique property, which is that they will, even in the presence of oxygen, will use the fermentation pathway. So in other words, they're only going to be using, cancer cells will ferment glucose and only take the 2 ATP that they get that way. And this is called the Warburg effect. And so Otto Warburg was a gentleman who discovered this phenomenon, like I think it was in the 1930s.
Wow.
And this is really a hallmark of cancer metabolism. And it really is the underpinning for, you said it earlier, you said, I'm not an expert, but isn't sugar bad for cancer? And the answer to that categorically is yes, because if you've ever here we go, he's pulling up some real
this is why I use Zoom, dude. I got screen sharing. It's the paradox of cancer's Warburg effect. We've got a graphic. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Excellent. If you are audio listeners, you're going to want to go back to livethefeel.com and click on the YouTube link. I'm sharing all this stuff. This is awesome.
Yeah, this is great. And so, as you mentioned, as it says here on the left, the differentiated tissue. This is a great graphic. It shows, I said 30, but it's 36 molecules of ATP that you get, and that little red circular shaped thing is a mitochondria. And so it requires glucose and oxygen, and it makes all this energy. A cancer cell, on the other hand, even in the presence of oxygen, its obligate use of glucose is through this pathway, the Warburg effect. And so, Otto Warburg discovered this, I think I'm just going to throw out there somewhere in maybe the 1930s, but it really kind of has been relegated to sort of a trivia in oncology. I remember learning this, but it was really never focused on. And it's almost shocking because when you look at how simple it is,
it looks so simple. I mean, yeah, it's, cool shapes and colors and stuff, but it's like you got two paths or one path. I mean,
and if you really boil it down, the important thing is cancer cells only use glucose and they don't use the mitochondria. As it says here, maybe 5% is going into the mitochondria for energy.
Wow.
And the rest is going through this fermentation pathway. And it's sort of like,
which is the lactate.
Right. And why is a cancer cell doing that? And there are a couple theories. One, which has been propagated by this guy, Dr. Thomas Seyfried at Boston College. He's a PhD researcher, and he's written a book called The Metabolic Theory of Cancer. His whole theory is that it's actually cancer is a disease of the mitochondria, and that all the DNA damage and so forth that we see in cancers is actually a side effect of a damaged mitochondria. Now, I'll caution this by saying this is all theoretical, and I don't necessarily believe that. But it's a.
But doesn't everything start theoretical?
Yeah, it's an interesting theory, and I think it, rather than saying that it's the be-all and end-all theory, I think that it certainly deserves a little attention. But yeah, there's his book. Yeah, Cancer as a Metabolic Disease. And for your listeners who are interested, that's a textbook, and it's very ponderous. I've not read it myself. It's a
it's a heavy read.
Big textbook. There's another book out there by Travis Christofferson, and it's called Tripping Over the Truth, and it's basically written for the layperson that goes into that if you're interested in the metabolic theory of cancer.
Yeah. Well, see, if any of these guys have reproduced this stuff into audiobooks, I would be able to crush it so much faster. I'm always promoting that.
Audio here.
Tripping Over the Truth. I found the regular book, but here we go. I'll share that as well for the watchers on YouTube. Yeah, The Metabolic Theory of Cancer, Travis Christofferson. So
I did read that one recently. It's an interesting book. I think the conclusions of it maybe go a little far. It's a little bit one-sided, but to me it was a little bit eye-opening to know that there is this metabolic theory of cancer and that it may not be so cut and dried. But really, just to back up and think again about the pathway that cancer cells use for metabolism. They're using glucose, and they're going through this fermentation pathway. So one strategy that, doesn't take a lot of mental power to come up with is, well, if cancer cells only use glucose, why, perhaps we could starve our cells of glucose, and maybe that would be a better way to treat cancer.
Right.
And so that really was the impetus for people investigating a ketogenic diet, because it's going to, when you eat 0 to 5% carbohydrate, there's pretty much no glucose left for your cancer cells to use. And so basically starves them of their fuel source. But, it's interesting because remember, your normal body, it of course likes to use glucose, but as you and I both know, and I'm currently in ketosis, so I know I'm functioning perfectly normal.
You're gonna make me buy this meter.
and it's because, my body, my muscle, my brain, it could perfectly happy using ketone bodies for fuel. But if I had cancer cells in my body, those would not be capable of using ketone bodies to grow and proliferate. So that's really the nexus. That's really the nut of this theory, is that by eliminating or highly reducing the availability of glucose, you're basically starving the cancer. And you can actually not just starve the cancer, but really thrive in a ketogenic state. And so I think that's really the important thing to know.
Well, I mean, and actually, I got another graphic here. I'm not sure. I think the first one nailed it, but just to add another vision back in for the video watchers, is this a decent representation as well?
This is the first time I'm seeing this graphic.
Right.
So,
right? I'm like, what is this?
Wow. Now I feel like I'm back in like biochem, like 101.
I know they got that right, because now they're referring to biomass plus lactate versus biomass plus ethanol, organic acids down at the bottom. I'm like, what?
Yeah. That's you're getting a little too deep here, man.
All right, we're tying into sugars. Okay, let me remove that real quick though. On a side note, since you were digging into books, did you listen to, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Tripping Over the Truth? I'm going to have this stuff linked in the show notes on the website. Because I've actually launched an Amazon influencer page. So all of the banners on my website, Amazon link to my influencer page. So all books are now being added and linked in there. So anyway, I did confirm Tripping Over the Truth is available as an audiobook on Audible.
And that's how I consumed that book.
Yeah, so I will be adding that to my virtual library because I've got a 2-hour drive tomorrow. And
it's a great book. In fact, I think the first half of the book is a phenomenal background on the history of cancer, and really it's a very well written book. I think that the author, he's of course is making the point about the metabolic theory of cancer, and he kind of quickly goes from introducing the theory to acting like it's the only possible theory, and that was my problem with it.
You gotta be careful with that. I mean, you take stuff to the extreme, and that's how you start pushing people away. You gotta let us come to our own conclusions. I mean, I take a hard stance on some things, but in the end, I'm like, listen, you do what you want to do. It's your life. These are my beliefs. You do what you got to do. That's why we really try not to talk about anything political or religious on this show, because it's just too messy. And I don't want the message to get lost, right?
Yeah.
Real quick though, did you listen to episode 168 on my show with Dr. Nasha Winters?
I did. Mm-hmm.
Our Body's Wildfire and Cancer. Her book was great. The Metabolic Approach to Cancer.
Right. So, and in fact, I remember I listened to that podcast like right after I had listened to Travis's book, and I thought, boy, these are pretty similar. But I have not read Nasha Winters' book though. I did listen.
Well, I've got it. I still have to consume it. So it's like, that's the problem with this. Like all of a sudden, you keep finding about all this great nuggets of knowledge, and then it's just making the time to consume. So that's why I tell people, like, guys, if you want me to get your book done, please release it on audio.
Yeah, exactly. But I do want to, stop there and just make a quick point again. I'm an oncologist, and I think that a lot of this is interesting because it doesn't get a lot of press. Although, patients are starting to ask me more about it. What is this about sugar? And I tell them, I think there's some truth to that. I can't tell you that it's validated in major clinical trials, but again, an illustration for you or for anybody who's listening who may be a cancer patient or who has a family member who is, if they've ever had a PET scan done, a PET scan is a cancer scan, and it's where we inject a patient first with radioactive glucose, and it is radio-labeled glucose. And we lay the patient under what's called a gamma camera, and we take a look at their entire body, and wherever the cancer is lights up. Well, guess what that is? It is where the body, it's where in the body is concentrating that radioactive glucose, because cancer cells are avidly taking up glucose.
Interesting.
When you look at a PET scan and there's a lesion that's hot, we call it hot, it's red hot on the scan. All that means is it's taking up glucose quickly. And every doctor knows that. It's sort of funny how there's this disconnect, right? Like every oncologist, nobody would doubt that. Everybody says, oh yeah, the cancer cells are taking up the radioactive sugar. Well, maybe a next logical step would be to say, maybe we should reduce the amount of regular sugar we're feeding ourselves if you have cancer. Because maybe, just maybe, the cancer cells take up non-radioactive sugar too. And we know, and I'm just joking because we know they do. But it's sort of funny how it's right under our nose, and we just sort of ignore it, as cancer doctors. But I do want to say this again. I was getting to this a minute ago. As exciting as this is, I want to be very clear. It's an adjunct to therapy. This is in no way. I don't believe it is, even in my wildest dreams, that we're going to be able to cure cancer by fasting exclusively. That you're not going to be able to cure cancer by being ketogenic.
Okay.
I think that in rats we have shown, there has been some remissions induced with ketosis and things like that. But in a human, it's reckless. It's crazy to assume that that's the case. But I think as an adjunct to treatment, these have a lot of promise. And one of the other areas that has been studied and published on is actually with intermittent fasting and ketosis in the period just prior to chemotherapy. And sort of the way to think about it, what it does is it basically starves the cancer cells of sugar. And then when you hit them with the chemotherapy, the cancer cells are more vulnerable and they die quicker.
Right.
And then at the same time, the normal tissue cells, because remember, chemotherapy is almost an indiscriminate poison, right?
Oh yeah, even Vinny, when he survived his cancer, it's like he still had to go through that, whether you like it or not. Didn't matter how much he started getting into that lifestyle in the very beginning. It's like he still had to go through it.
Yeah, but fasting for a day or two, during or prior chemotherapy has been shown in some of these published studies to not only sensitize the cancer, but to actually protect the normal tissue. So these people, I read one anecdote, was a woman with breast cancer, and she fasted, the day before her chemotherapy. And, after she received that chemotherapy on the day she had been fasting, she had no nausea, no vomiting, no side effects, felt fine. And then, the next time she got chemo a couple weeks later, she didn't fast, and it made her very sick. So that's just an anecdote. I mean, it's not a, but
it's one of those N1 experiments,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. And those are the kind of things we hear, in the published data does sort of support that. There's a group I think it's at USC in Southern California. Walter Longo and his group is studying this. So, it's something to keep our eye on. And, but I do just want to be clear that, again, metabolic treatments, fasting, ketosis, these are adjuncts to therapy. I don't think they're a standalone.
So is this Walter Longo? Is that like a well-known cancer foundation organization?
He's a researcher in Southern California, and I've listened to several podcasts by the guy. He's I guess he has a foundation too.
I find it all.
Yeah. So
amazing graphics on the website, ladies and gentlemen. You're gonna have to watch this YouTube video because it's like this is really cool stuff. I don't know what I'm looking at, but
I think that's a mock-up of what a cancer cell might look like under an electron microscope.
Conceptually, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty powerful. But yeah, interesting tag he has on here. 1 second. A short-term fast appears to counteract increases in blood sugar caused by common cancer drugs, protecting healthy cells in mice from becoming too vulnerable to chemotherapy, according to a new study.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of like what I was just saying, his study, I think the best way to think about it is it really demonstrated the best of both worlds. It protected normal tissue against the dangers of chemotherapy, and it sensitized the cancer to the chemotherapy. So that's kind of like that's optimal. And so again, it's early. A lot of these studies are still being done in rodents. They are also being done in humans. So we have a lot to learn. But I think
it sounds like it.
Promise.
Wow. I mean, we're coming up on our hour. I'm not sure if our listeners can handle any more knowledge bombs. I mean, where are we at, Doc? I mean, we've covered a lot here today. I mean, I've been writing stuff on the boards. We went from cancer and keto to understand the difference between ketosis and ketoacidosis to going over the ketones of beta hydroxybutyrate to AKA BHB, acetone to acetate, and then obviously we get the little plug, the Charlie Foundation and the Volter Longo. We brought up a bunch of books. Well, real quick, what was that formula again on the fat versus protein? I missed those numbers.
So again, I don't think there is a hard and fast. I think everybody is
Yeah,
going
like
to
a rough idea.
but you're going to have to get, sorry about that. You're going to have to get close to 80 to 90% of calories from fat.
Wow.
Yeah. 10 to 15% from protein.
That's crazy.
And
That's a big difference.
Yeah, and some people will be able to achieve nutritional ketosis with a little less fat, a little more protein, and everybody's different, but that's a ballpark number.
Yeah, that's an estimate, and then obviously using tools like you suggested today. I'm going to try and get those linked into the blog post as well too, so you guys can score some of those on Amazon. Because at this point, I'm probably going to order one so I can play with it.
Yeah, and I think you should. But again, I guess one last thing I wanted to talk about would be something that Thomas Seyfried talks about in his textbook, and I've listened to several podcasts with him as well. There really is a trove of information out there in the podcast world. Let me drop a couple more names for the listeners. The biggest one, I mean, the biggest advocate and source of knowledge, my knowledge on the ketogenic diet, ketosis, would come from a guy named Dom D'Agostino. If you've
heard yeah, Dom. Everybody talks about Dom.
Yeah,
I want to get him on the show, man.
He's like the Godfather, and so he's had several. I first heard of him on the Tim Ferriss podcast, but he's pretty much made the rounds with all the major health podcasts. So
yeah, he's been on Vinny's show. I think he's been on Vinny's show a couple of times actually on Fitness Confidential. So yeah, trust me, I'm a viral follower of Vinny. So yeah. And he's probably next to people like, by the way, that graphic, I got that graphic that I was showing earlier off of the article was linked to was actually on Medium, and it was actually from Dr. Jason Fung's write-up.
Yeah, and he's the fasting guru.
All right, so I hear a lot about the whole crossover between Jason Fung and Dom D'Agostino, and then obviously all these other guys you're bringing up.
Right, yeah, well, and that's interesting. We mentioned those two people. They're both kind of the predominant people in their respective sort of theories. But, again, the two fastest ways to get into ketosis is to either fast or to eat the ketogenic diet. And those two guys, if you listen to any interviews with them, they could give you the high points. But, one other interesting thing I'll leave you with is something we had read about, and it's the potential of a prolonged fast, anywhere between 3 to 5 days. Water only.
I've not done beyond 48.
Yeah, and it's very challenging. And sort of, this is something that Thomas Dr. Seyfried talks about. And what it allows you to do is to get your what he has developed is this biomarker called the glucose ketone index. Mm-hmm. And if you're in a prolonged state of fasting, I think it would be difficult to achieve this without fasting. I don't think a ketogenic diet could achieve this. But what you have to do is get your glucose level very low, probably around 60, and your ketone.
That I can do.
Yeah, I mean, and simultaneously have your ketone level up around 3 to 4 millimolars. And so, that will yield a glucose ketone index of approximately 1. And that's basically that he has studied this in laboratory setting, rodent models and things like that. And in his research, that is the optimal range with which to stimulate the process of cellular autophagy, which is self-cleansing, in other words. And so that has big implications for cancer, because you and I talked last time, and I remember you said it, and I've heard it said before, and I believe it to be true, is that cancer is a natural process, and it probably occurs in all of us every day in a way. And all it means is there's one cell that went awry in our body. Our immune system has found a way to has sought it out and cleaned it up. And so that is autophagy, when your body, eats itself, when it takes care of the bad. Apoptosis or autophagy is that normal process of cleansing what's not good and
Oh yeah,
getting
the
rid of
human
it.
body's a powerful machine when it's been taken care of.
Absolutely. And so anyhow, Dr. Siegfried talks about how when you can stimulate autophagy by fasting, particularly when the glucose ketone index gets very low, down to 1. So that's something that to me is intriguing.
Very intriguing.
Yeah. So
And have you done this now?
and
Have
we
you reached
have
the 3 to 4 days?
I've done. That's the longest I've made it. I've done a
I like how you say made it. Like,
yeah.
we just made it. We just pulled it out.
Well, I'll probably be doing a post on it at some point. But it's it's, again, I'll caution that it's not for beginners. You have to be fat adapted. But once you are, quite honestly, once you get past, like you mentioned, you've done 48. That's the hard part. Once you get past 48 hours, it's
Yeah.
easy after that.
I even got my parents to do it, and that was a few years ago. But
Wow.
and
Wow.
they were 60s, and they followed my protocol. Now, granted, it was a supported fast, so you're still taking in essential vitamins, nutrients, etc. But you're not consuming fats, proteins, no meals. Like you're just taking this nutritional vitamin support system. That's it, and lots of hydration. So you're basically just peeing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole point is your body's attacking its own fat. It's purging those stored toxins out of the system. All the rest of your organs are kind of on a hiatus, and you're just focusing on, hey, I'm my body's natural ability to detox. It's like, oh, good. This is the only thing I got to focus on for the next day or two, right?
Yep.
And a lot of people are like, I could never do that. I'm like, it's 2 days of your life. Get over it.
You'll make it. Yeah. So it is challenging, but anyhow, so that's I guess we did cover a lot. I mean,
as I figured we would.
Yeah. Great.
Because I'm a sounding board, so you're never gonna have a problem with me. And the listeners, this is got to be actually one of my more techie, or so. Actually, no, I won't say it, because I did just air this today. My 23andMe health data genetic analysis with Dr. Anthony J, who's a geneticist with the Mayo Clinic right now. So you might enjoy that one. So
yeah, it's on my queue.
yeah. Yeah, I love this. See, people are like, why do you have a podcast show? I'm like, well, admittedly, I think there's a little bit there just for me, because I get to geek out and I get to learn with you guys, but my listeners get to learn along with us. And if we get through just 1 or 2 people every single episode, we win. That's all I care about. I just want to get people to get outside their comfort zone and consider what if, right?
Absolutely. And so, and I guess if one of those people might even be you. So what I'm going to do right now on your YouTube feed is I'm going to check my ketones. So I've got my little ketone meter. And so maybe,
Let's do it.
Maybe you'll get one. So I got this little thing here. It's like a little stylet.
Okay.
And I'm just I press it here and it's going to just poke my finger.
All right. That's the little needle nail thing.
Just a little drop of blood going now. And so I just loaded up my, my strip. And it says ketone. I don't know.
Okay.
If you see it. Okay.
So
we just kind of put that drop of blood on there.
Now those have to be replaced, though, right?
Single
use things.
Yeah. Okay. Those are single use strips, and I got to tell you, that's the only downside about them is they're expensive.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt. I mean, it's one little drop of blood. All right. So mine's reading out.
Well, diabetics have to deal with this all the time.
Yeah. So there's mine. 1.0.
Look at that.
1.0. So
well, you're not in like a 3-day fast right now.
So I'm at about 24 hours.
Okay.
I ate dinner last night. So
okay.
So yeah.
Actually, and that's my tip too. I tell people the best way to go about doing your first fast is when you first wake up. Like, and to your point, you can have a shot of olive oil if you wanted to, and it's not going to like throw you off too bad. But the point is like, I don't even do that. If I'm on a full like 24 to 48 hour mission, like it's on, baby. Like I wake up, I'll have a coffee. I mean, I'll have my water and everything else, but I'm not consuming. And it's a lot easier when you first wake up. And in the beginning, if it's your first time, maybe your second time, yeah, because it's new. Everything new is a struggle. Absolutely. But then you teach and you learn the process. And that's like, now I could turn that on whenever I want. I just did it like 3 weeks ago. Like, yep, I'm going for a 2-dayer. It was like, actually, I wanted to get like a really strong detox cycle. And then I finished it 2 days before going to Philadelphia to compete in that 2-day CrossFit competition.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So people are like, wait a minute, you did a fast before you went and competed? I was like, yeah, my energy went through the freaking roof. I mean, now, granted, my team only came in fifth. My fiance's team beat us; they got third. She's still happy to rub that in.
Good for her.
But but the point is, it's like, look, I'm still doing fasting and helping my body with its detoxification. And people are like, well, then if you've been doing this since 2010, why do you have to still do it? I'm like, because we're in an unhealthy planet and you
Constantly
have dirty water, dirty air. I'm not always drinking out of my metal bottles. I'm trying to, but sometimes I'm at a conference and I ran out of water and they're only selling it in plastic bottles. That's how you're gonna love Dr. Anthony J. His book is called Estrogeneration. So he studies all about the estrogenetics and all that stuff. So,
yes.
that's what I'm saying. You're gonna like him. But the point is, it's like, get outside of your comfort zone and actually try some of these what sound to be crazy. But like, what Mike thinking? What if that's the thing that finally cracks the nut for you?
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, so you literally scanned a 1.0. Challenge, the gauntlet is laid. I am ordering some toys.
Get it on.
Actually, I'm gonna. Hold on. This is happening. All right. So what do I got to order? Is this in your blog article? Actually, you got to just click on those. Do you have links in your blog article? Or no?
I think by the time this recording goes live, I probably will. But as of right now, I don't have a post up about ketones. But
but you have your Precision Extra meter's linked there.
Yeah, that's true. I did link it in there.
Yep. Okay.
That's the one.
Yeah, there's a couple different packages. I found one that's a little bit bigger that has all kinds of all the extra accessories and stuff.
Yeah, again, if anybody's interested in this, you can buy the Precision Extra on Amazon. The strips you can buy on Amazon as well. I think they currently retail on Amazon for it's going to be $1 to $3 per strip. The first time I bought them, they were like $3 a strip. I mean, it was crazy.
Whoa. Yeah. So okay, here's the one that's linked from your blog article. Again, ladies and gentlemen, it's ourhealthhabit.com. I'm going to embed the actual blog article again in this podcast show notes. It was embedded in the last one too. It's important for you to find this stuff, but he's already gone ahead and done the navigation for you. Takes you right to the Precision Extra little tip. This one's only $38.
Yeah, and that's the amazing. You know how it is. Like,
strips not included. Not included.
Right, and so strips not included. And there you see it. You want to get the ones that are not in a box. They're like
I'm zooming in on that.
Yeah, that like sheet of them right there, and you can get that for decently cheap.
All right, so let me look. I found one that's like a big package. So this is not one I should get. Or wait, hold on. Ooh, I zoomed in too much. Hello.
We just buy the unboxed strips. This looks like some kind of. I don't know what this is.
This is somebody's I clicked on somebody's blog article. I'm gonna go back. Yeah, I don't need that crap. No, I like this here.
Click on that purple one there. Yeah, that's the
one you guys are buying.
I think so.
What was the other one next to it?
That looks like just a bigger pack, like 100 of them or something.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Jesus, I'm all about experimentation, but seriously.
Start with a 30-pack, you'll be all right.
Yeah, this is pretty hardcore. But again, you're going to use one every single time. And how often are you doing it?
So that's the thing is, I mean, again, it's cost prohibitive. Like, you're not going to be checking it all the time. They have gone way down in price. So here you're getting 30 for $35. So they're about $1 each.
Compared to when you first started, which was 3 times.
I'm not kidding. Like, this was just a year ago. We bought 10 of them for $35. So,
marketing tip. You just gave us a marketing comparison from 1 year ago. So, what do you think? People are learning about this stuff.
Absolutely.
And they're doing it more.
Yeah.
That's how costs go down.
Yeah.
Demand goes up. They can start mass producing. The pricing gets better.
No doubt.
Hopefully for a good reason. I mean,
yeah.
I hope more people are trying to do this because they are trying to get healthy. So, but then again, there's so many other reasons why people do some things. So cool. All right. And then what was that poker thing?
I think when you buy the meter, it'll come with that.
Okay. I'll double check that. So, but what's that called anyway?
It's called a Lancet.
A Lancet.
A Lancet. Yeah.
But obviously we're not lancing our skin. It's a lancet.
Well, you are lancing your skin, but it's a tiny.
I'm thinking about a lancet, like lancing your skin with like a laser. I mean,
yeah, that's the tip of this thing. I mean, I don't know if you
little needle. Yeah, I see it.
Tiny,
So it's a LANCET.
Yep.
Okay, doing pretty good with my spelling tonight.
All right.
I'm gonna pat myself on the back. There we go. All right. So, all right, let's shut this puppy down. This has been a powerful episode. We've dumped a lot of nuggets of knowledge tonight. I have so much stuff to stick in the show notes. I got to get an intern. So the passion is exuding my capacity. Brendan, just like last time, I always want to honor my co-host. Let you guys shut this episode down. All encompassing. There's just so much you shared back on episode 173. I don't even know what number this was going to be yet. I have a lot of stuff to put in the show notes. How do you want to sum all this up? What is an all-encompassing message that's just going to really help somebody who's hung out this long in the episode and it's like, oh my God, where do I start? There's so many books. There's so much stuff. What's up? Like, how do you want to sum this episode up?
Well, if you've heard enough to pique your interest, there are, like I mentioned, a couple of people I would definitely, before you dive into it, listen to something by Dom D'Agostino.
Oh, yeah.
I would either recommend the one from the Tim Ferriss show, or there's another excellent podcast called Nourish, Balance, Thrive, and they had him on there as well. So listen to something by him, learn a little bit more about it, learn what goes into it, and find out why you might want to do it. Again, as an N=1 guy, I think a good enough reason is because you want to try it. And you could do it and find out, gosh, that was miserable, or gosh, I did it and I don't feel any better. But you might be a cancer patient. You might have a family member who is. You might have somebody. Again, another thing we didn't talk about is the other potential use for ketosis is in neurodegenerative conditions. So Alzheimer's is a huge one, because it's more and more is being learned about Alzheimer's disease, and the pathogenesis is likely related to altered metabolism in the brain. So again, a metabolic therapy stands to make a lot of sense in that case. So do your research. You're probably not going to get a lot of support from this from your family doctor, just because as I mentioned earlier, they're not going to know about it, or they're going to have a preconceived bias against it. We talked about the potential risks of ketoacidosis are very, very low. The only other sort of thing that bears mentioning, that the reason why a lot of doctors would be against it, is because if you do eat a ketogenic diet, again, fasting isn't going to do anything to raise your cholesterol, but if you eat a ketogenic diet that's 90% fat, you're going to see your LDL cholesterol number go up. That's kind of just a fact. The importance of that, I think, is debatable.
Not all LDL is bad.
Yeah, exactly. So anyhow, I guess I'll leave it at that.
Get a particle test.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that. That there's a lot of promise. Again, people ask me, are you totally a keto guy? No. I think ketosis, I look at it through the lens of evolutionary biology, and I think of ketosis is a natural state that we needed to survive, and we can use it in times of scarcity. So I like to do it intermittently, like, once, twice a month, go and spend a day to 3-4 days in ketosis. But I don't live in ketosis. I think if I had one of these conditions I mentioned to you, cancer, Alzheimer's, I would consider doing it, long term.
Oh yeah, epilepsy.
Yeah,
all that.
absolutely.
All these neurological conditions.
So everybody's different, but that's kind of where I'd like to leave it.
I love it. Listen, hang tight when I give you proper goodbye off the air. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do one last screen share because he did plug Dom D'Agostino. So his site is ketonutrition.org. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom of this page, you're looking for an expert to follow. His Twitter, his Facebook, his Instagram is linked there. I already follow the guy. He's got a YouTube. I haven't actually checked in on him in a little while, but I know this guy's got a lot of content. But again, again, I think the doc has said it all best today. I'm going to go ahead and share one more time. There it is, ourhealthhabit.com. That's how you keep in touch with Brendan. He's all over the social media too. Thank you again for coming on the show again. But again, ladies and gentlemen, just think outside the box, okay? Go back and listen to episode 173 with Brendan. Listen to this one again. Go back multiple times. Definitely check out the YouTube feed because there's a lot of great stuff that we shared on there. But again, thanks for tuning in to another Live the Fuel podcast show. We definitely fueled your health and your lifestyle tonight. We'll leave the business to another time. But again, thanks for tuning in. Remember, you too can live the fuel. We'll talk to you guys again soon. And you're free of the pod. just video now for
All
fun,
right.
extra content. So
Great.
I
Well,
always get a little extra love for the YouTube people. So
yeah. Well, thanks for having me again. This was a lot of fun.
I got so many notes. I got to photograph that. I got every single website I brought up here. I left them open because I'm going to take every URL. I got to put those in my notes. Man,
You got your work cut out for you.
it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
We definitely rocked a solid episode tonight. So
anybody who's still hanging in there watching can see me walk around the house.
That's cool.
I've got my new Microsoft Surface tablet here, and I'm just about out of.
What do you think of those?
Well, I've had it for about 3 days now.
Okay, then that's really hard for you to really weigh in on.
Yeah, but so far so good. I actually enjoy it. The portability is great. The little
is it basically like a full PC?
It is. I mean, it's super fast. It's a full PC. It runs regular Microsoft applications. I bought the the suite that includes PowerPoint and everything. It's a normal computer. It's great. The keyboard is like one of these soft-sided kind of things.
Yeah, like you can get for the iPads and stuff.
Right. Yeah. So I to be honest with you, I've got the main reason I got the Surface
for the hospital.
Well, no, but it's we have an Apple AirBook or whatever it's called.
MacBook Pro?
Air. Yeah, MacBook
Air. Yeah, Air is a smaller one.
And I've had it for like 2 years now, and I guess just after using it for a while, I decided I just don't like Apple. I'm just used to a PC. I grew up with PC. Like I want to find the settings, and I never.
You are so James's friend.
Yeah, you're right.
That, because I texted him the other day and I sent him like an emoji, and he's like, "This is how your emoji came through." I'm like, "Oh, I forgot. You're not an Apple guy." Like,
well, unlike our mutual friend James, I'm also not like totally anti anything like that. So I have an iPhone, and I don't plan on getting rid of my iPhone.
No, neither do I. I love my iPhone.
I love the iPhone. I just honestly, I can't figure out how to use the software. Just not used to.
My biggest client is all Apples. She's got an extra MacBook Air sitting there that she's offered for me to use when I'm there. Plus, I've been doing a lot of video production for her, so it's like just creating some new concepts. And it is a lot easier to do photos and video work on a Mac. So admittedly, I do most of my video editing on the iPhone.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
I have iMovie right on here. I can do it all right here.
Yeah.
So
we've
probably
got
80% of my business I run off my iPhone.
We've got both in our family. So we've got the iPhone, the MacBook, and then now a Surface. But
there you go.
Anyway, so yeah, I like it.
Well, I might be retiring this laptop. I mean, I've got one of these Dell laptops where the monitor actually will release and become a tablet. And I can close the whole laptop over, and now it's a tablet.
Uh-huh.
I've probably used the tablet mode 20 times in 3 years. So not overly excited by it, but I'm intrigued with the Surface. So I'll have to poke around a little bit.
I would say the biggest downside of it, which has come up a few times, is it's great on a desk. Like that on my desktop here. It's got a nice keyboard, but it's got that kickstand. And if you're sitting on the couch and you have it on your lap, it's not really conducive to that.
No, you got to get a special case like people do with the iPads, where you create that triangular type of pitch, and you can get a different case that gets you whatever you're looking for. But to your point, unless you got a keyboard on the screen, now you got to find. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. We'll see.
We'll try.
But anyway, I had a blast. I'm gonna be texting Vinny literally tonight when I get off here, saying, "Hey, Vinny, I got another influencer for you," because he specifically does a influencer show every Friday. He airs a influencer show every Friday. And right now, like, this is huge because your knowledge around fat and ketosis and oncology and him being a cancer survivor, right up his alley. Like, this is, I don't know, I can't guarantee you when we get you into the lineup, but now that I'm on the inside of his team, I got a little more influence, hopefully. I don't know. But he trusts me. And I think he's got a huge audience, so just FYI.
Will be interesting.
All right, man.
I'm excited to meet Vinny. Just connect us, man. That'd be great.
Well, like I said, I'll text him first, and he usually wants me to do a warm intro with him first, and then I just send him an email with the information. So when I do that, I'll do a warm intro email. You both get hooked up, and hey, no hard feelings if he doesn't get a hold of me. I got plenty of stuff going on, so I know.
My feelings won't be hurt.
I want to see if I can get you recorded, because I thought I heard him say that he's a little low on influencers right now. So I was like, oh man, maybe I can get you in and get you aired before the end of the month during our Indiegogo Fat, a documentary campaign. By the way, if you check it out. So
Yeah, I need to. I haven't yet.
no, I mean I've already bought 2 of the perks myself. I've already thrown $200 into the pot. We've already passed 65,000 raised.
Wow.
Well, and we only been up like a week.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But it's a 30-day campaign. We need to hit 150 he wants this to be raised. He's like, listen, I can find a way to get corporate sponsorship. I don't want people to use that against us down the road. He's like, I want the truth. I want experts to come out, be in the documentary people like Dom D'Agostino and Timothy Noakes from South Africa and all the gurus, right? And he's like, I'm inviting the vegans and vegetarian experts in too. He's like, I just want everybody to come out on camera and just tell the truth. So anyway, our minimum threshold is to hit 150 by the end of the month. So it's a big campaign right now. I'm excited for it because I want to see this come out. He's worked hard his whole life, and it's just about, hey, Fat, a documentary is the name of it. But it's all over my social media.
I saw it on there. I'll have to throw something at that too. That's great.
Well, you use my link. It's I did a short link. It's bit.ly. I don't know if you've ever seen bit.ly links before, but it's bit.ly/support fatdoc. So FATDOC, because I'm tracking data on that, so I can show him how my feeds impact his feeds and blah blah blah. So,
is this on your website here?
The support actually it's probably on my Instagram. Most of my posts on my Instagram, unless you're not on that. No, you're on that.
I'm on it, but I haven't really
I haven't put it up on the actual Live the Fuel site. It's just here. I'll just email you back. Like, hey, here's the link.
Yeah, I guess that's easy.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's instead of www, it's bit.ly, and then but you hit a slash. FYI, if you ever need this, bit.ly is a aggregator, so it's a site you can just take really long URLs into and just shrink them.
Oh, okay.
But then you can either take what Bitly tells you, like a bunch of letters and numbers, it's only 4 or 5 characters long, or you can make a custom domain. So it's bit.ly and then whatever you want. So I custom keyworded it as support fatdoc. So just to have fun with it.
Okay,
so
cool.
I use it all the time. You should check it out. I mean, you got nothing to worry about. You should not check it out.
Hey, also, I'm forwarding you a picture. I told you I'd get you a new headshot. If you want to use something different, I'm sending that to you right now.
Definitely. And I'm going to email you back that campaign link. And yeah, we definitely appreciate the support, any sharing, because I think his whole point was, I don't know if you saw that documentary come out on Netflix about What the Health it was called.
Oh yeah, I actually have a post written about that. Actually, it's Forks Over Knives is the one I'm writing about.
The same one. They're all funded by vegan influencers, so it's all one-sided.
Yep.
And actually, so you should I'm sending you the link right now. When you check this out, watch his trailer. It's a short, like 1-2 minute trailer. I love it because he's like, Scott, he's been saying this on his podcast for 6 years. He's like, I've always had an open invite to all of the morons, he's like, listen, I will give you an honest episode, but FYI, I'm going to put your feet to the fire. I'm going to call you out, and you better have the accuracy to back it up. Mm-hmm. And nobody from the vegan and the vegetarian front has come forth. So
of course not.
And he's like, no, I'm not trying to bash it. He's like, I respect, if you're making it for spiritual reasons, whatever, I respect it. But he's like, at least tell the truth about health. So, anyway, so you'll like his trailer. He says it how it is. And I sent that over. So, cool.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again. I'll definitely check out the podcast, hopefully, or the Indiegogo thing, and
and like last time, I'll email blast you when everything goes up. So
awesome. What do you think? It'll be another couple weeks, or?
Yeah, I'm getting better now that I literally have the next 2 weeks of episodes done. I'm actually rearranging them, so I'm actually trying to, when I can, I'm trying to cycle like health, business, lifestyle, focus. Whereas before, I was just fire everything up. But now that I've got a lot in the tank, I am trying to at least rotate them a little bit. Oh, that's good. Just to mix it up a little. So,
just curious, like, and you're, because you obviously track all this stuff. When you track like your downloads and things like that, do you notice you get more traction out of your business ones or your health ones, or
health?
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if that's because it's who I am. That's my brand. You know, I haven't had time. I'm so busy with my other clients. I haven't dug in my own stuff. So, uh, you know how it is. Like, it's like, okay, there's a lot of stuff I'd like to do, but where's my time best spent?
Right.
But I do know for a fact that my health episodes, I mean, my two of my most downloaded episodes in the most history was Dr. Jack Cruz, episode 51. That was the first episode that I ever published YouTube content for.
Mm.
And then he was ruling the YouTube world in my channel. But then along came the paleo cardiologist, Dr. Jack Wolfson.
I listened to his too.
His
Yeah.
episode, I've had him on multiple times. And his one episode destroyed Dr. Jack Cruz on YouTube. I think because of my key words of using now, because back then the AHA released a stupid article by their president about how coconut oil is like deadly. So I lined up Dr. Anthony J, Jack Wolfson, my local sports nutritionist, and we did 3 back-to-back episodes just ripping apart AHA and telling the truth about coconut oil and its
Yeah.
impact
Those are
on heart
those are
disease.
the ones I listen to. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
So they were good. So yeah, hands down, health is still the ruling domain, which
Okay.
is great. I don't mind. I'm still going to
Yeah.
keep those 3 domains in focus because everybody needs to learn how to balance this stuff better. So,
Awesome.
all right. Well, you have a great night.
Thanks, Scott. We'll catch up soon, man.
Oh yeah, I'll text James back and let him know mission accomplished. So he was letting me know that you're going to be. I guess we're going to be talking about the Vinny thing. So I'm going to
Great.
text Vinny next because Vinny's in California, so he's 3 hours behind.
Oh
Me.
yeah.
He's still
Yeah.
working.
Text him now. Not at 7 a.m. Yeah, he'll be pissed. Yeah.
No. All right.
All right, Scott, man. Thanks again for having me. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you again as well. And remember, hey, FYI, if you end up having more and more inspiration around keto, cancer, whatever, and you have other themes, I'm happy. You want to, if this is like an outlet for you, you can become like our resident keto oncology guy who wants to come on once in a while and just vent.
Yeah, or if if other, I'm happy to, come back on and, I'll let you know if I get passionate, like, oh, I want to talk about something, I'll call you.
Seriously,
Or
I'm
vice
fine
versa.
with it. I have a regular sports psychologist. I have a regular sports nutritionist. I don't
Yeah.
really have a regular doctor. It's kind of a free for all. So,
right. Okay. I'm happy to be on again. If you get a topic, you say, Wayne, we really need his input on that,
Yeah. The invite's open both ways. And then plus, think about this, to help hack you with your blogging. I haven't done it a lot, but every once in a while, I'll send my like a recording, or like you could actually send the URL link to our show, that episode, and I forget the name of the website, but they charge like $1 a minute, and they will transcribe all of the audio.
Oh, cool.
Nice little hack for blogging. So,
okay. Great.
But that's it. So you could just voice talk what you want to say, and just have that company like give you all the text back. And next thing you know, you're turning around. I mean, if you don't mind spending the money, you can turn around blogs a lot faster.
Heck yeah. I type slow, so.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, all right.
All right, man. Well, have a good night.
Great night.
Signing off. See ya.